Good morning. Welcome to Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Dr. Andine Young, she, Annie, and I'm so pleased to be here with my children and extended family and friends. My daughter Talia Youngski will be leading us through some Kitka, Slavic Caucasus folk music. Their Kitka choir will be going to Georgia, not Atlanta, Georgia, but Georgia the country soon. And we also brought Nathan and Kevin, who are a part of the UC Berkeley Cal Jazz Choir, and they're helping us sing these pieces as well. We're looking forward to Brett and Elliot later. And I want big thanks to the people at the AV desk. Help me thank them. All the staff here. Please join us for hymn 1010, We Give Thanks by Wendy Luella Perkins. Please rise and body your spirit. We Give Thanks is a hymn by Wendy Luella Perkins, who is a Unitarian Universalist minister and folk singer from Kingston, Ontario, and this is a blessing. We'll sing this twice.
Thank you. Let's have another appreciation for our musical start this morning. Thank you. Wonderful to have all of you here today. Good morning. Welcome to the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, and my pronouns are she and her. And we're really grateful to have all of those who are visiting with us today. And we have, as Ondine said, some very special musical guests. And also, I will introduce another one in a minute. We are glad that you have chosen to spend part of your week with us here in the sanctuary in the Borton Hall. Or maybe someone will show up on our patio with a puppy. I don't know. No one so far. And, of course, our folks online. So we're grateful to have all of you in all the ways that we gather. And we hope that you will stick around after service today because we have a lot going on. For those who are ready to make the commitments of membership, we will have a signing of our book about 15 minutes after our service, which happens on the first Sunday of each month, but we didn't have service last week, so we'll be glad to have that happen today. And we also have our a very important program on electrification and what we can do to be part of protecting our planet. Did anyone think it was hot this summer? Yeah, we need to take some action, so come and learn. We've got a light lunch that you can join with us in, and we'll be glad to have you there as well for our speaker. We also have our coffee and conversations round restarting this week, so watch for that, coming soon to a coffee shop near you. And we will also have ice cream and a chance to sign a card for Ondine Young, since this is her last Sunday with us. And so we will be doing that after the service as well. So we hope that you will join us for that. And welcome to this beloved community. I want to introduce, before I close, we're very grateful to also have our guest speaker today, the Reverend Beth Banks, my beloved colleague who is now very active with the Humphrey Fellows program in Davis and is also has been involved for many decades as a congregational minister. So welcome to Beth as well, bringing a topic that I know many appreciate. So welcome. It's good to be together.
Good morning. My name is Sharon Solstice. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a member of your Board of Trustees. Now, we begin our service by reading together our mission statement. There's been a little hiccup this morning, and we don't actually have a slide for you to follow. So those of you who repeat it every week get to show off your knowledge. We bring to life our Unitarian Universalist values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, bridge the divisions that wound the human family, transform ourselves and our world. Okay, so my little contest didn't work, but thank you to the tech deck. Check out our weekly email and the Beacon newsletter for the many things that are happening here. We appreciate our continuing commitment to stay home when we have symptoms, to make this a safer place for us all to gather. And we ask you to consider taking precautions, and we're glad that we have our outdoor spaces open on the days when it's not too hot. So watch for all the exciting things that are happening in what remains of the summer in our Beacon newsletter. Welcome. It's great to be together.
Thank you, Sharon. And I do want to thank Aiden for being the lead on our tech deck today, even though he's got a broken wrist. So thank you, Aiden. You're the best. This is our time for greeting one another, and I know this topic is one that many people are very excited about. So as you greet one another, you can say your name and then maybe say one book that you hope will never be banned.
You can.
Good morning. Yes, thank you. It's our first time back in almost 12 weeks, yeah. So much for physical therapy, though. Very hard. Anyway, I'm going to read to you a passage, and hopefully I'll condense it so it won't be too long. One of my favorite books, written by an Australian author, Mem Fox. She writes children's books that are delightful and books of reflection. These are radical reflections on teaching and teaching to read. As adults, we choose our own reading material depending on our moods and needs. We might read the newspaper, a blockbuster novel, an academic article, a woman's magazine, a comic, a children's book, or the latest book that just about everyone is reading. Nobody chastises us for our choice. No one says, that's too short for you to read. No one says, that's too easy for you, put it back. Nobody says, you couldn't read that if you tried. It's much too difficult. Yet if we take a peek into classrooms, libraries, and bookshops, we notice children's choices are often mocked, censored, and denied as valid by interfering teachers, librarians, and parents. Choice is a personal matter. We should let it be. Someone told a 16-year-old illiterate student that Nathaniel Hawthorne's book, The Scarlet Letter, was about a prostitute. He wanted to read it. He was determined to read it. That's a book I'm going to read, he declared, and he did, even though the language is 19th century English and much of the vocabulary unfamiliar. It took him a long, long time, but he learned to read because no one laughed at him when he said, I'm going to read it. Let's stop laughing at kids. Let's leave our mocking voices outside. Let's stop being interfering adults who won't allow children the same freedom of choice we accord to ourselves.
All right. Good morning. Hi. At this time, I would like to invite those who are young or young at heart to join me up at the front of the room. Hello. Everybody needs to do things in their own time. Yes, my favorite student. By the way, my name is Casey Gardner. My pronouns are she and her, or they and them. And I'm very excited to be joining you all today because I get to do one of my favorite things, which is I get to read a book. But I get to read a book with you guys. This one has some really cool pictures. This is probably one of my favorite books for young folks. This is a book called I Am Jazz. And I just want to say that I feel very honored to be reading this book today because it is a very good book. So I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do. And I'm going to try to hold this microphone and turn pages. Actually, maybe Leslie can turn pages. Yeah, I love that. You want to do the honors? I love that. All right. So this is a book called I Am Jazz, and it is written by Jazz Jennings with help from Jessica Herthel. All right, so it starts by saying, I am Jazz. That's her name. For as long as I can remember, my favorite color has been pink. My second favorite color is silver, and my third favorite color is green. Quick question, who here has a favorite color? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite color? What's my favorite color? It's turquoise. It's turquoise. Here are some of my other favorite things: dancing, singing, backflips, drawing, soccer, swimming, makeup, and pretending I'm a pop star. How many of you heard something you like on that list? Me. Most of all, I love mermaids. Sometimes I even wear a mermaid tail in the pool. It sounds hard. Yeah. My best friends are Samantha and Casey. Huh. We always have fun together. We like high heels and princess gowns or cartwheels and trampolines. But I'm not exactly like Samantha and Casey. When I was very little, and my mom would say, "You're such a good boy," I would say, "No, Mama, good girl." At first, my family was confused. They always thought of me as a boy. As I got a little older, I hardly ever played with trucks or tools or superheroes. Only princesses and mermaid costumes. My brothers told me this was girl stuff. I kept right on playing. My sister says I was always talking to her about my girl thoughts and my girl dreams and how one day I would be a beautiful lady. She would giggle and say, "You're a funny kid." Sometimes my parents let me wear my sister's dresses around the house, but whenever we went out, I had to put on my boy clothes again. This made me mad. Still, I never gave up trying to convince them. Pretending I was a boy felt like telling a lie. How many of you guys have ever told a lie before and it didn't feel very good? Yeah, same. Then one amazing day, everything changed. Mom and Dad took me to a new doctor who asked me lots and lots and lots of questions. Afterwards, the doctor spoke to my parents, and I heard the word transgender for the very first time. That night at bedtime, my parents both hugged me and said, "We understand now. Be who you are. We love you, no matter what." This made me smile and smile and smile. Mom and Dad told me I could start wearing girl clothes to school and growing my hair long. They even let me change my name to Jazz. Being Jazz felt much more like being me. Mom said that being Jazz would make me different from the other kids at school, but that being different is okay. What's important, she said, is that I'm happy with who I am. Being Jazz caused some other people to be confused too, like the teachers at school. At the beginning of the year, they wanted me to use the boys' bathroom and play on the boys' team in gym class, but that didn't feel normal to me at all. I was so happy when the teachers changed their minds. I can't imagine not playing on the same team as Casey and Samantha. Even today, there are kids who tease me or call me by a boy name or ignore me altogether. That makes me feel crummy. Then I remember that the kids who got to know me usually want to be my friend. They say, "I'm one of the nicest girls at school." I don't mind being different. Different is special. I think what matters most is what a person is like inside. And inside, I am happy, I am having fun, and I am proud. I am Jazz. All right, and now we will sing the children off to their classes. pivot today. Gosh, I love that book. All right, well, I've already introduced myself, but I will just do so again. I am Casey Gardner. My pronouns, once again, are she and her, or they and them. So this past week, I did what I do every week in the first week of August. I set up my classroom. I pulled the desks back into place, bought new soap and tissues, printed out the seating charts, and of course, as an English teacher, I lovingly arranged my classroom library. As I did, I found myself running my fingers across books that I too had once found on the shelves of my own school and local libraries. Books that have in so many ways made me the person who I am today and helped me to develop into a more well-rounded individual. As a once high school student who is now a high school teacher, I increasingly found that the books that roused such fondness in me were mostly those that addressed topics that might have been considered controversial, even for that time. This is about 20 years ago, by the way. Books that I tended to gravitate towards as a young person often spoke about topics of social injustice, gender and sexuality, counterculture, illness, drugs, gangs, violence, racism, misogyny, grief, and death. And many of these were stories that, as a young person, I sought in order to better understand these topics. Many of them were things I didn't either have language or context for. Or, if they were topics that had touched my own life, they deepened my self-compassion, because as I learned in those moments, I knew I was not alone. And I often struggled to make sense of the world in my youth as someone who, in many ways, was not fully in the world yet. Reading allowed me to be in the shoes of others, to walk around with them in my mind's eye, and picture the lives of people whose stories either converged from or unexpectedly aligned with mine. For example, even as I am sitting here thinking about this, I remember some of the books that I picked up, or in all honesty, may have actually stolen from my own high school at one point. Hence why I only casually condemn this behavior as a teacher. Like, look, I've read The Book Thief, it's okay. Anyways, these titles were sometimes edgy and scary and may have been things that if I were a parent, I might be afraid to think about my own child ingesting them so freely. But after growing up as this kind of reader, into an adult who actually ended up writing my master's thesis about the relationship between reading and empathy, I now know this to be true. Reading many different kinds of books, if anything, removes the mystique from what we consider to be taboo. And for young people, sometimes that even removes the allure from that which is truly dangerous, because shame and hatred and bigotry all thrive in darkness. What reading can do is shine a light where there isn't one, illuminating truths previously hidden. One of my favorite pieces of research that I came across in writing my thesis, and I constantly refer back to it, is Suzanne Keen's theory of narrative empathy. In it, she explains how reading not only has the potential to build and strengthen our ability to intuit the feelings of others, but it explains how if you actually scan the brain of someone while they read, you will see that it quite literally lights up our brain in our mirror neurons. Essentially, it activates one of our most foundational human mechanisms for perspective taking, as well as shared connection and compassion. What you must understand is this: most people who want to ban books claim to do so in the interest of public safety, but their true message is really this: we want people to stay in the dark. We do not want them to know more than one truth. We do not want them to accept that anything that contradicts what they are told by those who are put in front of them, and they want to reinforce a strategically narrow worldview. They do not want young people to feel empathy towards one another, and they want to stoke the flames of misunderstanding and disconnection in the name of morality. But in our UU spiritual practice, we commit ourselves to something different, what we call a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. This is our fourth principle. So in plain terms, book banning stands directly in opposition to this. It conceals truth and deprives us of meaning. And that is the reason why it is the focus of our service today. As a teacher, a reader, and a UU, I am proudly an advocate for books that are commonly banned in too many places in this country. And that is why I regularly house them on my classroom shelves. Because from them have sprung so much truth and meaning for me and for the millions of people who hold them dear. To sum up my thoughts, I want to quote one of my former students. She performed a poem at the National Youth Poetry Slam this past July, in a poem adequately called Book Banning. In it, she culminates her piece by writing, "Ignorance needs to be met with strong voices and hope, speaking the truth to all of our citizens. We must fight for those who cannot do it themselves. We must not let our stories be extinguished. It is our responsibility to keep these stories from going up in flames. So come, let us seek the truths within them together."
Please rise and body your spirit for Wake Now My Senses, hymn 298, verses 1, 2, and 5. Wake Now My Senses, the Reverend Thomas Mickelson wrote these words and set them to a traditional Irish melody for the ordination of a Unitarian Universalist colleague in ministry.
Before we move to our joys and sorrows, I would like to invite Scott Schrader and Ondine Young to join me up here. And what I want to say is that a year ago, actually, I'm going to take this off. A little bit over a year ago, when we, come on up here, all the way up. Let's encourage them. There we go. A little bit over a year ago, when we faced the news that our music director of 20 years, Mark Tuning, was leaving, we knew that we were going to need to have something different. And so we were privileged to have Ondine Young join us for a year, and that was our agreement to be able to try out what could happen, some possibility, and to give us a different sense of possibility. And Ondine joined us on August 15th last year. And so today is this week will be her last day. with us. And while we're grateful to the Music Search Committee and the things that are coming, we want to spend today and just be very grateful for all the gifts that Ondine and her family and her friends have given us through this year, which have been many and rich. And so we want to do that. I'm going to ask Scott Schrader to just say a few words. Scott, as a longtime member of our music community, just a few words on our behalf.
Thank you, Leslie. I've been with this church and in the choir for 26 years. And thank you. And it's always a fun deal, and I've seen a lot going on here. Musically speaking, of course. So this church year was rather challenging for us due to all the illness that was happening. There were so few people. Some of the leaders of the choir, including myself, were out for extended periods of time. And at one point, whole sections were gone, and I had never seen that before. We were doubting ourselves. We didn't know if we could pull some of the pieces off and sing them in the appropriate manner. And here's Ondine with this optimism and faith in ourselves, more so than we had. And with her positive attitude, she was saying, we can do this. We can make it happen. If we need to make adjustments or changes, that's okay. But we can sing this piece on the scheduled Sunday. And we did that time and time again, thanks to Ondine's leadership. So looking back at this year, I'll remember her with her wonderful positive leadership and her can-do attitude. So thank you, Ondine.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. And we're going to have some ice cream and with lots of different possibilities. Hopefully one that Ondine can have, which is always that's been one of my big learning curves this year. After the service, and there are cards to sign out there as well. But I wanted to present Ondine with two tokens of just small tokens from us. One is one of the boats from our celebration, because Ondine was the blue boat home she helped us sail through this year. And the other is a gift certificate to Berkeley Bowl, which is, I think, a grocery store you can use. Right, okay, there we go. So, but we're so grateful, and let's take a moment again to just thank Ondine for all her gifts. Now we will come to our joys and sorrows, though this, of course, was just a joy and a sorrow in and of itself. I'd like to invite those who have written in our book of joys and sorrows to come forward at this time. And I'm wondering if, Casey, you could go down and help distribute candles. Thank you. In case you haven't noticed, I was gone for a couple weeks, and then when I came back, everyone else went away. So it's kind of just me today. It kind of feels that way, but we're getting through, so that's good. I'm going to ask Casey to light the first candle, which is a candle of sorrow. And that is that many of you remember our former members, Tom and Shirley Thompson. And Tom Thompson died last month. And I have the privilege, I've been asked by the family to conduct the service, which will be held on Tuesday and will be available on Zoom. So if we're going to have that link on our website at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, if anyone's interested in attending. But we are sending Shirley and Andrea and Melissa and all the others in the family our thoughts today. And we are lighting, I'm going to ask Sally Edgerton to come forward. And Sally says, I would like to express my gratitude to Reverend Leslie for nudging me back into singing after 50 plus years. And especially to Ondine for helping rebuild back my confidence. Yes, I still have the high G. Janice and Pete Davis are lighting a candle this morning, and we are glad to see you back. They write, after a long absence, we return with great news. And Jenny says, I am well on my way to recovery. Oh, no, to Pete. I am well on my way to recovery after pneumonia, major infection, 2 hospital stays, and 2 heart surgeries in 2 days. I feel better than I ever have for years. Janice was disabled the day of my first surgery after a terrible fall, and we have received incredible aid from numerous friends, and I must name one, Ed Bradley. Ask about his act? His act of heroism. I will. Well, everyone ask Pete afterward about that. Welcome back. We're so glad to have you. Mary Helen Binger is lighting a candle also of gratitude for the cards, calls, visits, texts, and flowers after her surgery, which was at the end of July. And we are so glad to have you back, Mary Helen. I'm asking Casey to light 2 candles, to celebrate that Liam Young-Skeen, who has been part of our amazing gifts that we've had this year, is going to Oberlin, Ohio, where I just came back from this fall, so we're really excited about that. And Aiden Lewis, who's on our tech deck wearing an amazing cast. You should stand up for just a minute. This is dedication, folks. Is also going to Maastricht. All right, and that we are going across the seas for that one. So we are going to, yes, we're grateful to have you. And Talia and Kika are going to Georgia, not the one that is the state, the Slavic one, soon to tour. And Ondine is going to YWCP. Young Women's Choral Project. And yes, so we're grateful for all of those things. So thank you all. And now I ask Casey to light 2 final candles. One holds those joys and sorrows that are not expressed in words, but which we hold in the sanctuary of our hearts, and the other to hold our hopes and dreams for this one troubled but beloved world of which we are a part.
Please stay seated. Please remain seated for meditation on breathing. Twice through, hymn 1009 is by Meditation on Breathing by Sarah Dan Jones, who wrote this chant as a meditation for spiritual healing in the aftermath of the September 11th, 2001 attacks.
I invite you to join me in the spirit of meditation and the deep ask of prayer. I invite you just to settle into this moment, to feel yourself present in this space. And I invite you to summon all that is holy and sacred to you, whether you call it a name, see it as an entity, or simply experience it in community. Together, may we take a moment to connect with our idea of truth, whether it is that noble, larger reality that is for many of us at the core of the divine, or whether it is found among others of similar mind, and the way that we hear different perspectives and through those grow in our own. However we feel truth, let us take a moment today and think about how sometimes we think of truth as something invincible, as something that will always rise. And yet we have only to look back a very short way in human history to know that that is not always the case. That truth, like courage, like beauty, like all that is worthwhile in life, needs its protectors. So together, today, may we take a moment and vow to be among those defenders, those protectors. Let us think beyond what makes us indignant and what makes us feel righteous when we think we have all the answers. Let us, for just a moment, while we are here together in this place where we can hold what it is hard to hold alone, let us think for a moment about those for whom new truths are so threatening they have to repress and damage lives to suppress them. Let us think together about the lives that are damaged by this repression and suppression. Let us think about these areas in our own lives where we are trying to avoid some truth that might be just on the periphery of our existence. And together, here, in the courage of community, may we commit to be the parents of truth, the guardians, the lovers, the protectors, not with a philosophy of self-satisfaction, but with a spirit of inquiry, humility, courage, and reason. May we know that each day, we have opportunities to step into these roles. And when they are presented to us, may we vow together now to take them. Amen.
can I keep from singing?
Good morning. My name is Linda Russell. I am a member of your Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. On the centennial of his birth, it seems very appropriate to share the words of James Baldwin, who once wrote, "It is certain that ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have." In thinking about today's message from Reverend Banks, I listened to a podcast from the Smithsonian Institute featuring Dr. Carla Hayden, who is the appointed librarian for the Library of Congress. She compares the book banning to the early mandate in America of not allowing slaves to learn to read, citing Frederick Douglass's autobiography in which he talks about the fact that his master was not happy when he found out that his mistress was teaching Douglass to read. If you let him read, he'll be restless. He won't be satisfied with his condition. This, Dr. Hayden adds, is the very reason there's a philosophy among librarians that free people should be free to read whatever they want in order to learn about that which may be different from their experience. In the same podcast, I learned the first book banned in the United States was New English Canaan, written in 1637 by Thomas Morton, an attorney. In an interview with Smithsonian correspondent Colleen Connolly, she described the setting, the time, and the personality of the author. Thomas Morton was a different sort of Puritan. He gave big, lavish parties, which sometimes included pagan rituals. Native Americans were among his invited guests. Morton wrote about plants and animals and natural resources in this new land. He also wrote critically about the Puritans, including how they treated Native Americans. Morton held several spiritual beliefs and wanted to create his own colony, an egalitarian utopia without a main leader. He was exiled twice, and given the Puritans were in control of the printing at the time, they destroyed many of his books that they had printed. The Puritans wanted to be seen as all believing the same things and behaving in the same way, what Nigerian author Chimamanda Adichie calls the single story, that all members of a group hold one set of values. But that is not how we actually live. As I look around this sanctuary, I celebrate the plurality of who we are as a faith community and our recognition and embrace of multiple identities. Dr. Hayden says censorship indicates what people are afraid of, and it is often focused on ethnicity and identity. So the highest form of control is to restrict access people to knowledge. But when people are allowed to read and understand for themselves, that knowledge is the ultimate power. We are a part of a faith that encourages inquiry, self-determination, and authenticity. Frankly, that is part of our messiness, and it is our joy and our gift that we give to each other. Please give generously as you are able of your treasure, your time, to support our staff and activities that serve this community every day. The ushers will now come forward. Now, please join me in the dedication of our offering to the work of this community in transforming ourselves and our world. We dedicate ourselves and our offerings.
This is an excerpt from I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. In a passage where Maya fantasizes about her own appearance, wouldn't they be surprised when one day I woke out of my black, ugly dream and my real hair, which was long and blonde, would take the place of the kinky mass that Mama wouldn't let me straighten. My light blue eyes are going to hypnotize them after all the things they said about my daddy must have been a Chinaman. I thought they meant made out of china, like a cup, because my eyes were small. And then they would understand why I had never picked up a southern accent or spoken the common slang, and why I had been forced to eat pigs' tails and snouts. Because I was really white, and a cruel fairy stepmother who was understandably jealous of my beauty had turned me into a too big Negro girl with nappy black hair, broad feet, and a space between her teeth which would hold a number 2 pencil. This book is on the banned list for sexually explicit scenes. It has been challenged for being anti-white and encouraging homosexuality.
An excerpt from the introduction from An Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. It's nonfiction. We are here to educate, not forgive. We are here to enlighten, not accuse. That was written by Willie Johns, Brighton Seminole Reservation in Florida. Under the crust, she writes, of that portion of earth called the United States of America, from California to the Gulf Stream waters, are interred the bones, villages, fields, and sacred objects of American Indians. They cry out for their stories to be heard through their descendants who carry the memories of how the country was founded and how it came to be as it is today. The history of the United States is a history of settler colonization, the founding of a state based on the ideology of white supremacy, the widespread practice of African slavery, and a policy of genocide and land theft. Those who seek history with an upbeat ending, she writes, a history of redemption and reconciliation, may look around and observe that such a conclusion is not visible, not even in utopian dreams of a better society. An Indigenous Peoples' History is on the banned book lists for teaching critical race theory and presenting a history that inflicts the feeling of white guilt.
An excerpt from The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini, who grew up in Afghanistan in the 70s, moved to the US as a refugee, and the novel's beginning is about his childhood experiences in Afghanistan, where the main character, Amir, describes his relationship with his childhood companion, Hassan. I never thought of Hassan and me as friends, not in the usual sense. Never mind that we taught each other to ride a bicycle with no hands or build a fully functional camera out of a cardboard box. Never mind that we spent entire winters flying kites, running kites. Never mind that to me, the face of Afghanistan is that of a boy in a thin-bone frame, shaved head, and low-set ears, a boy with a Chinese doll face perpetually lit by a hair-lipped smile. Never mind any of those things, because history isn't easy to overcome, and neither is religion. In the end, I was a Pashtun, and he was a Hazara. I was a Sunni, and he was Sira, and nothing was ever going to change that. Nothing. The Kite Runner was banned for descriptions of homosexuality, offensive language, religious viewpoints, sexually explicit scenes, and descriptions of violence. And there is also a fear that the book promotes Islam.
1984 by James Orwell. Orwell wrote 1984 to have the reader experience the terrifying possibilities of an authoritarian society. Readers see the world through the eyes of Winston, who rebels against the system. The novel's important themes include controlling the mind through language, intimidation, and the importance of knowing our history. Simi works at the Minister of Truth, creating a new dictionary of language that would be approved by the party. "How is the dictionary getting on?" said Winston. "Slowly," said Simi. "I'm on the adjectives. It's fascinating. The 11th edition is in the definitive edition." He said, "We're getting the language into its final shape, the shape it's going to have when nobody speaks anything else. And when we're finished with it, people like you will have to learn the language all over. You think, I dare say, that our chief job is inventing new words, but not a bit of it. We're destroying words, scores of them, hundreds of them every day. We're cutting the language down to the bone. It's a beautiful thing, the destruction of words. Of course, the great wastage is in the verbs and the adjectives, but there are hundreds of nouns that can be got rid of as well. It isn't only synonyms, they're also the antonyms. After all, what justification is there for a word which is simply the opposite of some other word? A word contains its opposite in itself. Take good, for instance. If you have a word like good, what need is there for a word like bad? Ungood would do just as well. Better, because it's the exact opposite, which the other is not. Or again, if you want a stronger version of good, what sense is there in having a whole string of vague and useless words like excellent, splendid, and all the rest of them? Plus good covers the meaning. Or double plus good if you want something stronger still. 1984 is listed as the most frequently banned book in the United States. The theme of the book is the danger of authoritarianism. However, the message has been misunderstood by some to be pro-communist. Also banned for sexually explicit content and depictions of torture. These are just four examples. I realized I need to introduce the topic of this sermon in a different way when I go into bookstores. Because I asked them for the banned book section and they took me to the music section, thinking about a band. It's, you know, the fault is on the communicator, so I'll do better in the future. Thank you to everyone who has spoken before I will be speaking. Your messages have only enhanced this message that will be given, and I am very grateful. Recently, a video clip of a nationally known novelist, Ann Patchett, showed up on my Facebook account, and she's standing in front of shelves of brightly colored books at her independent bookstore. And she's beaming, and her eyes are sparkling. With a voice just shy of laughter, she says, "It's a pretty big day for me personally." And I'm thinking, what? Another bestseller, an award? I just got a call. The 2 of my novels have been banned in Orange County, Florida system. She is absolutely celebrating. And then with mock seriousness, she says, "Be careful. Don't read my books." And we know from previous comments what that does when you say, "Don't read that book." For an increasing number of authors like Ann Patchett, being a banned author is becoming a great badge of honor. And I love her humor and her light touch, But book banning is a sign of difficulties for democracy and for freedom of speech. One characteristic that is found in all countries that have moved toward authoritarianism is an effort to control publications, books, or the written word in any form. The pairing of restricting the written word and a rise in a totalitarian government has been repeated through history and many countries. In Nazi-controlled Germany, 25,000, let's just say, non-German books were burned on May 10th in 1933 in a public ritual. 25,000 books burned in just one day. And here's the thing, children and youth were enlisted to find these books on their own home shelves and throughout their communities. Children and youth. China's Cultural Revolution in the 1960s and 1970s with Mao Zedong. In Serbia in 1992, it's estimated that 2 million books were burned by nationalists. In Iraq in 2015, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria burned the Mosul University Library with over 1 million resources. The restriction, the destruction of books increases whenever a government or leader with power wants to dictate the thoughts of the population. This is always about control. Unitarians and Universalists have been cast out of communities or have died for what they have published. And this morning I offer you two stories from our past. One Unitarian story is from our long ago past, and I'll just touch on that briefly. And the second is more closely tied to the book banning that is dramatically increasing today. I'll just say Unitarian Universalists are people of the banned book. Michael Servetus lived in the mid-1500s in the cultural centers of Europe. There was a battle between the established Catholic Church and emerging faiths, the Protestant, the protest churches. Martin Luther and John Calvin are the most widely known reformers from that time, and there were others, including Michael Servetus, the person Unitarians claim as a part of our heritage. Servetus was brilliant, but not wise. A gifted student of languages, he read ancient sources of biblical text. In his studies, he found no evidence of the Trinity, and that is God's essence divided into three divine entities. He found no evidence of this. Servetus had a fierce rivalry with Calvin, and to make his point, he took Calvin's book on theology, and this is where I say he was not wise, and wrote personal insults in the margins, calling him an idiot, a simpleton, and referring to Calvin's conclusions as vomit. Not wise. And he sent it back to Calvin. Again, not wise. To say that the critique Servetus offered was not well received by Calvin is an understatement. Leaders in the established churches found his thoughts and ways of expressing himself to be dangerous. Both Catholic and Protestant leaders demanded his capture and his execution. The life of Servetus unfolded with all the drama of a Netflix or Amazon Prime thriller. He was caught, he escaped, he was burned in effigy, he changed his identity, changed his profession, went into hiding, returned and revealed his identity, and couldn't resist taunting his enemies, and was caught again. That's the quick review. Being a heretic and writing books to spread that heresy was considered one of the worst possible crimes, and the punishment for spreading heresy was death. whatever leaders had the ability to do so, would burn the books of the opposition. And I will say Servetus probably, undoubtedly, would have done the same. The author was also burned with their books. Calvin was infuriated to the point of being vindictive, so Servetus was burned with his books. The pyre for Servetus's execution was built from newly cut, slow-burning branches. Every copy of his book that could be found was used as fuel around his feet. A copy was strapped to his arm. Every important religious and government leader was present for this execution. It was a big event in Geneva. Everyone was there except John Calvin, who was the person to bring this forward. Ideas are not burned with the person or the books. The ideas continue. Why is the written word so powerful? Why are books so intimidating? Because what we read shapes our thoughts. It shapes who we will become. What is read by a society influences how groups of people think, and it informs the character of that society. There are other Unitarian or Universalist examples of printing presses being smashed, books being distributed by horseback, and people losing their lives or being exiled for their publications. We have heard about that already this morning, and I'm grateful I did not choose that research for the sermon. And extremely grateful it was presented. Every case of book banning I have found in our religious tradition is because the content encourages openness to the stranger, a God or a God force that is loving and not judging, and narrowing the distance between what we considered divine and a common human being. All of this is seen as dangerous. Fast forward hundreds of years into the 1820s in the United States, in the years leading up to the Civil War, this is an example that more closely parallels today. A popular literary magazine in New England challenged local writers in the 1820s to submit stories using two subjects. It's quite a challenge. The colonial history of America, so they wanted something back in the 1700s or before, and Native American life. Those two. 22-year-old Unitarian Lydia Maria Child answered that challenge, and she created the story of an interracial marriage between a Puritan woman and a First Nations man living in Salem, Massachusetts. You can imagine this was not what they had in mind. Critics condemned the storyline as being in very bad taste. So that's the equivalent of what you might read in the comment section, after a YouTube, the stuff that people say never read that stuff. In very bad taste. That's as bad as it got in the early 1800s. But, she became an immediate, celebrity because of it. Their condemnation launched her writing career that focused on racial justice, women's rights, and her disagreement with American expansionism into the West. Research about the history of book banning in the United States repeatedly took me back to this publication called the Juvenile Miscellany. And finally, I gave in. I was like, okay, I'll read about it. It was a periodical for children written during the years leading up to the Civil War. The main contributor was none other than Lydia Julia Child. She was aware that the periodical was read by the rich and respectable families, it says, of the Boston area, predominantly, but probably not all, Unitarians. The juvenile miscellany was extremely popular with the children. They'd wait in the front steps of their homes for the mail carrier to be distributed, and whoever got it first, that's where all the kids went, because they loved this so much. But there was a problem from the very beginning. Lydia Maria Child's viewpoints didn't necessarily align with the culture of the parents who enthusiastically were purchasing it. The main characters, the children in the stories, were allies. It was very shocking at the time, and perhaps would be today in some circles, were allies of marginalized groups. Native Americans, immigrants, free people of color, and women. The main characters were not the wealthy intellectuals of Boston. This in 1829. Her stories encouraged empathy with those who were outside the children's social sphere. And I found an early issue of Miscellany online. The first chapter was celebrating Chinese culture, admiring their education, and the difficulty of the written and spoken language, saying it would take a non-Chinese speaker 30 years to learn their language, celebrating the Chinese culture. There were chapters about science, zoology, music. The fictional stories often gave the children a moral dilemma and encouraged them to come to their own conclusions. Again, shocking. The juvenile miscellany was freeing, and it was dangerous. In the years leading up to the Civil War, children's books rarely included the topic of slavery or the lives of enslaved people. It was seen as emotionally inappropriate for children, and children should be shielded from controversies or painful events. By the 1830s, the juvenile miscellany included an increasing number of topics that made the parents uncomfortable. Certainly, it included learning about the existence of slavery and what that meant. The publications weren't destroyed in public fires. No centralized authority banned them. The wealthy, educated New England subscribers simply abandoned the magazine, removing its influence from their homes. And the juvenile miscellany folded within 18 months. In the 1830s, it was the parents, the consumers, who enacted the ban. The truth is that we grow in our humanity when we are faced with difficult, uncomfortable dilemmas, whether in print or in real life. This applies to 2014 as much as it did in the 1830s. As the Civil War approached, the tension increased, and book banning became more frequent. In times of tension in society, and we are in such a time right now, the desire to control increases. Starting from the 1800s to today, one of the most frequent reasons for banning a publication is that the subject is not emotionally appropriate for children or youth, and I will add in, or adults. Or perhaps it is not the appropriate moral perspective to be in public. There has been an unprecedented increase of book banning in schools in recent years, fueled by activist groups, often parents, whose parents have found a receptive audience with conservative state legislatures. The American Library Association reports that a 65% increase in banning titles in just 2022 to 2023 to 4,240 books, and it's rising. Texas, Florida, Missouri, Utah are leading states for book banning. However, in May of 2024, Moms for Liberty won a settlement for their right to speak at a public library gathering, and part of their issue at that public discussion at the library was the presence of books that affirm transgender rights. They won for freedom of speech. That was just this May. And in Fresno County, this was in Wednesday's newspaper, a supervisor is creating one of California's first citizen review committees for library books. They will decide what books with sexual references and gender identity will be moved to a special section, and parental permission will be needed to gain access to any book in this part of their library. All done to protect children. Keep that in mind. California is not immune to books being restricted, challenged, or banned. The Seventh Wish is a banned book written by Kate Messner, and after publishing The Seventh Wish, she received several messages from librarians and parents who were concerned about the book's appropriateness. The older sibling of the main character is grappling with addiction. One elementary school librarian explained why she wouldn't put the book on the library's shelves. For now, she said, I just need the 10 and 11-year-olds' biggest worry to be about friendships, summer camps, and maybe their first pimple or two. How do children come to understand addiction, I ask? Maybe they experience it themselves or witness in their family. Where do they find allies? Limiting the kind of life that's portrayed in books, with no identity issues, trauma that can be endured or survived. It shows an idealized American childhood that is rarely, if that ever existed, and I doubt it. Focus is most often on race and sexuality. However, I'll just read a few of the other things that are banned as a category. The American Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom lists these things. A story with characters who are non-white. Basically, any themes about sexuality. People living with disabilities. Issues of race or racism. Non-Western settings. Any fiction or nonfiction that includes a historical perspective that is not white, Northern European, or that doesn't portray the United States as a uniformly positive force in the world. These are all banned. The willingness to embrace the diversity that's represented on banned lists of publications is central to who we are as Unitarian Universalists. If Unitarian Universalists believe that love is at the center of our existence, we need to read banned books and make sure they're available to everyone. These books are tools that allow people who have been invisible or misunderstood to be seen and heard and known. Books that are banned offer a more complete history of this country, and it is humbling. It is so humbling. These books grow our capacity to empathize with others who do not share our narrow life experience. No matter who we are, we have one life experience. And we can benefit from climbing into the life of another. David Sedaris had this wonderful quote, "A good book would take me out of myself and then stuff me back in, outsized now and uneasy with the fit." What is on your virtual or physical bookshelf? on your Kindle, your podcast, your bedside table reading stack? What will stretch you and make you uneasy so that you do not fit comfortably into who you were? If what we read shapes who we will become, what soul shape are you leaning into? After this service, you're invited to browse this banned book exchange setup here, and I do not want one book left. Except for the ones leaning against the pulpit. Do not touch the ones leaning against the pulpit. A blessing on this congregation. May you go forth and be uncomfortable and read books that stretch your soul to a new shape.
Please rise and body your spirit for one verse only of Seeds of Hope, since we are running a little late. Thank you for your patience. Seed of Hope was written by a Unitarian Universalist composer to reflect optimism. He gives it as a gift to UU congregations. If you need to leave during our postlude, we will totally understand if you need to collect your children. And if you want to know the translations of what we've been singing, do ask us. It is related to what we're doing, because music has also been banned through time, and the subject of music and the cultures of the music, of this folk music. There's a seed of hope, and it perseveres nonetheless.
Your benediction is a message from me to you. Each of us is a part of an intricate web of relationships. When one of us celebrates a joy or grieves a loss, the web of life moves to a new shape. We are a part of the turn of the earth, the shift of the stars, the pull of the sea, and all change. And to that I say, amen.